All right. So welcome everybody to the first resilience session and first workshop that is here for you today. I'm so grateful to have you all here for this resilience workshop, which has been created especially for members of Alberta Foster and Kinship Association. And so today's session is really has been created to help to support you in being able to identify some practical tools and have a supportive space to build your resilience, both in your personal lives and, of course, as your really important role as caregivers. And I think we all know that your role is just really so important in terms of building stability and hope for children and families and communities. And just want to thank you for your deep commitment that you have and the strength that that takes as just a mom. I know it takes so much work, right? So I wanted to mention as well that this workshop is made possible through a partnership between Wellness Works Canada and Alberta Foster Kinship Association. And so it is a great opportunity for us to be working together to support a goal, a common shared goal of supporting well-being for all of you. And so there will be a number of different sessions that are going to be available for you. So if you registered for this session, you'll also get updates about other sessions that are coming up based on feedback that we've heard from you from surveys and different things like that. But definitely want to hear your feedback after today as well. If there's anything that resonates with you or other topics that you really want to hear about, we welcome you to share that. And even if you want to throw that in the chat, like, feel free to do that because we want to make sure that they are. So it's really the goal is all about supporting your well-being and enabling you to be able to, be well so that you can continue to do a great job as a caregiver. And so before we begin, I do just want to take a moment to ground ourselves with gratitude and respect and acknowledge that we're gathered today, whether I guess all virtually on the traditional lands of the Indigenous peoples of Treaty 6 and 7 and 8. I know there's people from different areas, but the Métis Nation of Alberta. And, these lands, of course, have been home to diverse nations for so many generations. The Cree, Blackfoot, Dene, Saulteaux, Lakota, Sioux, Stoney, and many others. And so, as we reflect today, thinking about supporting our resilience, we definitely want to honor the strength and the wisdom and traditions of Indigenous peoples who have cared for these lands and communities since really the beginning. And so, we just want to acknowledge the ongoing impacts of colonization and just affirm our responsibility to really learn from and support and stand alongside Indigenous communities in that spirit of reconciliation and respect. And so I hope that this acknowledgement can just remind us of, where we are, but also inspire us just to continually always create inclusive and compassionate and supportive environments for every child that we're supporting and all of you in the work that you're doing, because I know that a lot of the kiddos that you're supporting are of Indigenous background as well, and so it's important that we think about how we're doing this and coming towards to this. So if you probably haven't met me before, this is probably our first time meeting. And so I'd like to, of course, introduce myself. So my name is Victoria Granger. I am with Wellness Works Canada. So we're a not-for-profit national organization that supports the kind of the industry of workplace well-being. We do lots of research. We do lots of workplace training. We just basically have a vision of supporting and creating healthier populations and just supporting that. And I think my personal mantra in my life is that we have to be well to do well. And so that is part of the theme of what we're bringing forwards to you to help to support you to be healthy and to be well. And so, I've been working in the space of health promotion and for many years, over 20 years. That will age me now, but it's my passion, and I come to this when I'm thinking about building a resilience from learning the hard way. Sometimes you say there's this saying that those who can't do teach, and I think that's where I started. I think now I'm walking the talk of what. Where I believe and following my own advice. But I'm going to share a quick story with you about resilience before we get started and how it can look. And I think a lot of us sometimes think that resilience is something that is is something that is, where we just come into it with grace and resolve, and maybe we have some grit, but it's all about being tough and coming through and just managing everything. But I think the truth is that resilience can be a really messy journey. It can be something that involves a lot of complexity, a lot of falling over and tripping over ourselves, but maybe getting back up again. It can be ugly and not fun, this whole journey and this road to building our resilience for ourselves and for our kiddos. And I think I think we've tried to kind of glorify it in a way that doesn't show how, like, the authentic way it really is, or how it really is. And so it's important that we understand that. And so for myself, I grew in terms of learning what resilience looked like. Same thing. It had a lot of falling down and figuring things out the hard way. And so the reason that I'm so passionate about supporting it and promoting it nowadays is because, and that I have been for so many years, is because I learned the hard way of what a negative impact it can have on us if we don't prioritize our own well-being and our own sense of resilience. And resilience is really a skill, well, it's a set of skills that we can learn. And I think sometimes we think we just need to push through and figure it out, but there's some really tangible, practical ways that we can foster it in ourselves and in others. And it's important that we really put intention to it and that we really prioritize it so that it can be effective in supporting us. If we don't prioritize it, what will happen is that the demands of our kiddos, maybe our work, our spouse, our community, or whatever, they're going to take over, and we're going to have no time for ourselves in developing these skills. And when we only give and give and give to other people, we start to lose that sense of ourself. And unfortunately, when I lost my mom to suicide when I was 16, and she was someone who was an incredible caregiver to me and my sister and my brother and the family. My brother had some pretty severe disabilities, lives with autism, didn't walk till he was 6 years old, and had all kinds of different things that he was going through. And my mom had actually been a survivor of pretty horrific child abuse growing up, like physical abuse, sexual abuse, like you name it. And she made it her passion and her mission in life to help other victims of child abuse, and stood up and did a lot of advocacy work, was nominated Woman of the Year several years in a row, won awards, would adjudicate tough cases in the courts, and helping kids get the help and the support that they need, and did so much great work. But throughout all of this, she was all about supporting other people and other people's resilience, and trying to be, the greatest mom that she could be, and all these things. And she didn't support her own well-being throughout all of it. She just gave and gave and gave, and it started to become too much for her, and it weighed down really heavily. And so when I think about why I'm passionate about this and why I've adopted this mantra of knowing that, we have to be well to do well, is because I know the ultimate consequence that we can experience if we don't prioritize our own well-being and our own resilience, because yeah, it'll really impact our mental health, our mental well-being, our mental fitness, however you look at it. So I'd like to ask you a quick question before we kind of get into things, is how many of you brush your teeth every day? I know it's a funny question. Okay, I'm seeing lots of hands. Awesome. Okay, and now how many of you every single day do something that really prioritizes your own well-being or your own sense of resilience every single day to maintain your mental hygiene just the way you do your dental hygiene? Something that's solidified. There's no, like, you just do it automatic. How many of you do that?
I go to the gym every day. I have 6 kids and it's like my me time. Leave me alone.
Awesome. Good for you. Yeah, and I see, yeah, Christina, you put your hand up too. Awesome. So that's so good that some of you do, but not all of you put up your hands the same way you did with the teeth. So it is something it's so good to find something that we do. But we do, yeah, it takes a long time. Thanks for that in the chat, Tamara, that to be able to make it something that is just automatic. And behavior change and like changing the way we do things does take a lot of intent. It takes a long time for it to become a practice and automatic. Like we were taught as kids about brushing our teeth, and my 9-year-old still, both my kids, I have a 7, 9-year-old, both of them still don't automatically brush their teeth. I have to remind them every day, right? Same thing with our own, like setting goals for supporting our skill set. It's important that we kind of set those, that we remind ourselves. And so the workbook, I think, will be something that we can use and that you can hold on to start to set some goals of things that will resonate with you to help build your resilience, and know that it's what each of us do for ourselves is going to vary and be different, right? So Lily goes to the gym, and that's awesome. And other people, it might be like doing it could be all kinds of different things, but just figuring out what's going to help to support you based on where you are at, is something that's important as well. So, yeah, so let's get into some of the content. So there's a few different learning outcomes that we have for today, and one is just thinking about how understanding how our resilience and our mental well-being and our ability to deal with stress and all these things, how that's connected to our success as a caregiver. We're going to talk a little bit about resilience and like defining what it is and thinking about different factors that will positively impact us, and then really looking at different skills that we can use to support ourselves to be healthy and to be well and to kind of build this resilience for ourselves. So first, let's talk about a little bit of this, the first objective. There are so many ways that our personal resilience impacts our ability to be a good caregiver, and sometimes I think we have this conception in Canada and well, all kinds of different places, is that just the more that we give, the more that we put out, the better we're going to be at whatever it is that we're doing. Whether it be caregiving, we give everything to our kiddos, or we give everything to our work or whatever it is. Sometimes we get into this vicious cycle of like when the going gets tough, the harder I'll just have to start to work harder, or maybe just maybe sleep less so that I can provide more, or do all these different things. But of course, it's the opposite is true. When we can get into the more that we can get into a resilient cycle of saying, okay, when the going gets tough, that's actually my time. That's my cue to actually take a break or to do something for myself, to recharge my battery, to refill my cup, refill my tank, whatever analogy you want to use. Then that's going to help us to actually do better work. And I think this, and to be a better caregiver. And I think this is, it's an interesting way of thinking about things. I think in so many ways, but I think also what's really going to help us too is learning how to um, be really humble and ask for help, and understand when we are starting to hit a bit of a wall, or when we're needing a little bit more support. And that is, for me personally, was one of the toughest things for me to understand and deal with. My kiddos have my one son has some pretty significant challenges that he's going through, and mental health issues, and it was very challenging and stressful for me and the family and stuff, of course, to help support him. And I just thought I had to work harder and figure it all out. But I realized that without taking breaks and without supporting myself, I was actually becoming more impatient. I wasn't able to ride the waves of meltdowns and things like that. I was becoming really overwhelmed, yeah, and just not doing as good of a job as I could have. So, I mean, what the science says, what the research says, is that the more that we have time and space for ourselves, and we're able to build this resilience through these different skills, which does require self-care. We're going to have better emotional regulation and stability, which is, of course, something we want to model for our kiddos, that they have that as well. We're going to be so much better at problem solving and adaptability. So we're going to think better under pressure. So when there's a meltdown or there's a fight or when there's something happening, we're going to be able to adapt a little bit better, and to manage that crisis or handle unexpected behaviors, right? To plan in advance to help address issues or see triggers or things that are going to happen. And that will be an important one. Of course, a lot of people say too, it's not what we tell our kids, it's, what we model to them. But of course, that modeling can be really important. But of course, there's more to it and managing everything that's going on at the same time. It will also preserve our compassion and connection, right? Like compassion fatigue is real, especially if, we've got a lot of kiddos or different ones that we're dealing with at different times and different things like that. It takes a lot of emotional energy to have this deep sense of compassion to support others that, we care so much about. So it's so important that that we preserve that for ourselves. I've heard a lot of people say that if anyone, no matter what type of caregiving role you're in, it's not a matter if you will experience compassion fatigue, it's a matter of when. So really thinking proactively about how we can preserve that is going to be really important, and regain it back. And then, of course, it's just going to support, of course, your longer term well-being for yourself and others. And it's really about thinking about the long game is how I like to think of it. Like, knowing that if I take that space for myself to, like, whatever it is, go to the gym, or, actually take time for an actual decent shower, or, like, or be able to go outside and connect with another adult or another parent and go for a walk. I know that even though I'm taking that time and the kids might be like, no, don't go, that I'm going to come back so much better, like so much more refreshed, more clear-headed, and all these kinds of things. So it's really just playing that tape. If we do these things consistently, how is that going to support us in the long run? There's also lots of things that we're going to talk about in terms of short-term managing issues in the moment, but the long-term perspective can be something that's helpful as well. So, quick question, throw it in the chat. What do you think? Do you think that change and stress causes poor mental health? And the answers would be like yes, no, or it depends. What do you think? It depends, yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'll share with you a link to a TED Talk that I watched a few years ago. It's by Kelly McGonigal. It talks about how to make stress your friend, which sounds interesting, like an interesting title. Has anybody seen it before? No, I'm seeing some no's. So I'll share the link out afterwards, but I'll just share a quick like synopsis of what it looks like. So Kelly McGonigal was a researcher, or a psychologist, and she was t said that at the beginning of her talk, she's like, I have decades of time to make up for after I've been demonizing stress to everybody that I talk to and saying how we have to eradicate it, we have to get rid of it, it's all bad. And of course, toxic stress, high levels of stress that's unsustainable, stress that doesn't give us support, or sorry, stress that when we don't have the support that we need, the resources that we need to be able to deal with it, or the skills or the capabilities, all these things, 100% can cause poor mental health for sure, right? Absolutely. But he also talks about a different perspective, which is for not major toxic stress, but that talks about perception, right? And so, like you said, Christina, sometimes it's perspective, and it can depend, and if it's positive stress or negative stress. So stress definitely exists on a continuum. There's distress, which is that negative, to just, stress, to eustress, which is the positive stress that can help us grow, and that can be good for us. And so, of course, it's a balance of what kind of stress is it that's impacting us. But Kelly McGonigal says in her talk that there was this big research project that tracked a number of people over a number of years, and they looked at their perception of the stress, and they said that the people who felt that their body's reaction to the stress of feeling like an increase in heart rate, feeling the sense of adrenaline, feeling the sense of dread, all these different things, when they felt that it had a negative impact on them, it did. It also had a really negative physiological impact on them. So what happened to them physiologically is that their blood vessels dilated, or sorry, constricted, which is bad for heart disease and all that, right? If you've got any cholesterol or like plaque, and you don't want your blood vessels to constrict. It's not You're not pumping blood through your body like you should be. They had a higher risk of death from all causes. Tracking them in a long-term study and all kinds of things. But then on the flip side, they looked at another group and said, okay, for those looked at another group of people who perceived their body's reaction to stress as something that was positive and something that helped them feel equipped to be able to manage it and deal with it. And they said that they looked at their physiological response and they said the hormones, the epinephrine, the adrenaline, all these things were the same, but the body's reaction was quite different. And what happened was people's blood vessels, instead of constricting, they actually dilated. And what happens is when your blood vessels dilate, they also do that in times of joy. So pretty incredible, like how powerful our brain is to say, okay, and I can perceive this thing as a good thing, and I know I've got this, and this is tough, but I'm tougher, and all that stuff, and it seems maybe a little bit cliche or fluffy, but it's so true. The research like physiologically looked at the body's response and shows that it can be different, but of course. Easier said than done, right? Easier said than done to change our perception and our mindset. So we're going to go into a little bit about how and what that looks like. And there's all kinds of different things that are involved in order to be able to help change the mindset. But there's also lots of tangible practices that we can practice to help to support us. So one thing I think that is really, really important and really key is a bit of the self-awareness piece. And so for myself personally, I thought I had good self-awareness, but I actually learned that I don't. And I'm always trying to work on it because I think maybe I'm an idealist. I'm like, oh, I'm fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Like the cat, picture of the cat who's got like the wild hair that's going everywhere. And they're just, yeah, clearly not fine, right? With this saying that it's fine, I'm fine. And so I think that's where I was. And I would always pretend that I was doing well but wasn't actually doing well because I just kept myself distracted and really busy. And so this time for reflection and self-awareness, I think is so important because when we think about preventing burnout for ourselves, or when we think about preventing mental health problems, which we all experience, I'd say probably all of us, the statistics that are reported are that it's about close to 50% by the age of 40 of people will be diagnosed with a mental health problem, but only 1 in 7 people will actually go and get help and support for that. But if you think of only 1 in 7 getting support after getting a diagnosis, how many people are not even getting a diagnosis, right? So we all have stuff, we all have stress, we all have things that we're dealing with. But the sooner that we can identify that we aren't in the healthy or reacting zone and we're getting into more injured or ill, or even if we're in the reacting zone, the sooner we're going to be able to, hey, say like, hey, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to do something that may prevent me from putting out as much effort or time into caregiving or for others or whatever it is. But in the long term, it's actually going to save me my sanity. It's going to prevent me from, burning out and causing a situation where I won't be able to keep on going. And so I always, again, think back about my mom. She just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, right? And she got to the point of definitely being ill, and it wasn't a good state, obviously, and it was hard for everyone. And I actually went through the same thing where I was so passionate about my work and doing everything I did. I followed in her footsteps in a way, doing something different around health promotion, promoting mental well-being, and all these different things. But I've also experienced burnout and mental health issues that I've had to deal with and manage, and then now have to like play the tape backwards and now be more aware of when I'm in any of these different zones. So I'm actually going to throw this in the chat because this is a good little, there's an interactive, um, sorry, here we go. Okay, so there it is. There's an interactive online self-check tool that you can use where basically you kind of click on different areas of how you're feeling, and it'll let you know kind of where you are if you're in the green, yellow, injured or ill zone. And then it also provides some kind of guidance of like what can you do to help to support yourself. So normally if you're in healthy or reacting, self-care in terms of what that looks like for you and taking some breaks may be may be sufficient. But of course, if we're in some of these areas, we might need to do a little bit more in terms of reaching out and getting some support and getting help that will to help us to prevent things from getting a little bit worse. So that's one resource. And I also wanted to mention I will be following up afterwards with you all just on an email with other additional resources that hopefully will be helpful for you. The more that we can yeah, make those available, the better. So let's talk. So self-awareness is really, really important. Let's talk a little bit about resilience and think about some of the factors that really impact it. So, we can't always think about. But often, again, sometimes we think that resilience is something that, again, we go through with resolve and grace, but not always, right? So we need to think about what it really is. And so what it really is, it's not a, it's about bouncing forwards, not bouncing back. I would say our goal in building our mental fitness and our building our resilience should be around, always learning and always growing and getting to a state where we're in a stronger position than we were before. And so building this, it takes effort, right? And it's not about going through the stress and pretending, everything's fine and like being a unicorn in the clouds, right? It's normal to have a lot of ups and downs, maybe some frustration, some shock, whatever, during hard times. But we really can become out stronger than before only if, we have the resources that we need and the skills that we need and the connection with other people to support us to get through it. And so really, there's lots of different types of factors that influence our ability to be resilient. So there's different differences that we have. There's another session that we're going to talk a little bit about burnout as well, and we'll talk about like some of the different personal risk factors that we have. But a lot of it is around, our individual perception, which we can change with intention, our experience as a caregiver or at work or all these different types of things. What else is huge is social support networks. So any of those like caregiver chats and things like that, if you're not utilizing those right now, I like heavily encourage you to do those, connecting with other parents and other caregivers that are going through similar situations can be incredibly supportive and help us not feel alone in what we're doing. Also thinking about our belief in our ability to do the work that we're doing and caring for those kiddos. Also our sense of self-efficacy. And this one is huge because I don't know about you, but when you are dealing with lots of kiddos have lots of things that they're navigating, right? Navigating, rates of mental health problems, anxiety have quadrupled. Like there's so much stuff that's going on, and the kiddos, most of the kiddos that you're caring for have higher levels of stress, higher levels of like trauma, and all these things that they're dealing with. And so it really takes a lot of persistence and a lot of support and a lot of caring to help move the needle. But it can be really hard to see the sometimes there's wins, but it can also be really challenging sometimes to feel good about an impact that we're making because it's a journey, right? Like it can take a while. And so sometimes we might feel like we're not doing it right. And I actually took a course one time that talked about, if you're doing the things right 30% of the time with your kiddos, you're doing good, you're doing well. And I thought that was helpful, like reframe of perception of, you don't have to do everything perfectly all the time because we are human beings. Kiddos dealing with human beings in general is one of the hardest things in the world. Being a caregiver is, I think, the hardest thing in the world. And so thinking about those wins for ourselves to build a sense of self-efficacy is so key. Like, so, like I did one thing right today, and really focusing on that, right? Because we can't control our kiddos and what they're doing. And so just again, celebrating those quick wins as much as possible is going to be really, really so important. So let's get right into some of the skills that we can think about building. So I think a couple of you might have joined a little bit late. Does everybody have access to the workbook that's in the chat? Anyone not have it, I should ask. Anyone not have the workbook? And it's online. But if you you can use it later on if you don't have access, like if you're on your phone right now, for example, and don't have access to like complete it online, you can always just write notes on a piece of paper. That works too. Yeah, whatever works best for you. But does anyone still need it? Do I need to upload it again just so you have access to it? I'm seeing, I don't think so. Okay. Okay. I'll forward it as well after the session so that you all have access to it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some resilient skills and things that we can do to help to support you. So, like I said before, the self-awareness piece is really key. And so, what we really want to be thinking about in terms of t doing something that's tangible to help to support ourselves, to build a sense of awareness, to see, what zone we're in, is to do this daily check-in with ourselves to see where we're at and taking the time and the space to do that. So it might be, going to that link that I sent you of this self-check, or it might be saying, hey, where am I on a level of 1 to 10? And it's actually something that can be really helpful to do with kiddos as well, so that everybody has this sense of self-awareness of where your current state is, because then it helps everyone be more receptive to each other of everything of where you're at. So there's different ways that you can do it. So there's this link to the self-check, but there's also from a 1 to 10, where am I right now? 10 is like great. 0 is like I'm not doing well. And this is going to help each other relate to each other better. And sharing where you are at also is helpful. Another thing that can be helpful for check-ins that I see people just do even like at dinner is like the rosebud and thorn. Anyone heard of that analogy before? Where no, so you basically you can do it with your kiddos and give your time for the self-reflection, and everybody this time for the self-reflection and awareness of thinking of what is one rose from today. So what's kind of one positive thing that's blossoming, or one thing that went well? What's one bud? So what's one like possibility? And what's one thorn? What's like one thing that's just like, yeah, thorn in my side and like making me really upset? And it's kind of just a neat little practice of getting to, like, if you have a time that's away from screens and all that kind of thing, to do, as a family, to see where everybody's at, and it creates a little bit more self-awareness for everybody about what's going on. And so that is one thing that we can think about doing, is really increasing that and being really open and vulnerable and honest with yourself and with other people. I think one of the things that prevents us from being resilient and helping support each other is just pretending everything's kind of fine and okay when it's not always, and that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. We all are not okay sometimes, and so that's an important piece. Then, of course, there's different types of emotional regulation tools, which you probably heard of or seen. There's something we're probably working on with your kiddos, but also, of course, it's important to model that behavior with yourself in terms of building that resilience. And oftentimes, all it takes to kind of build this sense of regulation in ourselves and managing like high levels of stress is a pause and thinking and giving yourself that time. So there's different acronyms that you can use to give yourself this pause. And so I call it the power of the pause, right? If you can just get yourself like 90 seconds to get out of a room, on your own, in the midst of whatever it is. Maybe it's a meltdown that your child's experiencing, or, whatever it is, it can help you stop and think and respond to the issue at hand versus kind of react to it that like we normally would. So, so the acronym STOP is just to help us to remember to do that. It's like, okay, I am going to stop with a double P. I'm going to take a deep breath, maybe even practice box breathing, which is basically, how many of you have heard of box breathing before? I'm seeing some hands. Yeah, it's really, really handy. I've been talking about it forever. The military uses it for like Navy SEAL, and the Navy SEALs use it for like high stress situations. But I think we all know the research too of the level of stress that caregivers experience, especially when our kiddos have lots of different challenges. It's just as high as that of the Navy SEALs, and so it's good to think about skills that we can use. And so the box breathing is basically inhaling for the count of four, holding for the count of four, exhaling for the count of four, holding for the count of four, and repeating it. And it just gives you doing that for like 2 minutes to do that breath, and then try to observe things from being objective and pulling back and thinking about what might work, and then proceeding. The other one is around thinking about, what am I noticing? Um, naming that, right? And I know this is all basic stuff that you've probably seen before, but the idea of today's session is really to think about what are some really simple practical strategies that we know about, but what can we actually put into practice and follow and do and figure out what works best for us. So we have other lots of other different strategies coming up, but so for example, yeah, so no, just noticing how we're feeling in the moment when we're really stressed to be able to respond versus react. Thinking about, naming where we're at, and accepting that really uncomfortable feeling of where we're at, and then thinking about how we're going to respond it versus reacting. And there's this infographic that I think is helpful for kind of looking at it in terms of how we can support that within ourselves, and thinking about like how can we just grab that 90 seconds of pause to help to support ourselves, so that when we're experiencing all kinds of triggers from chaos that's happening in the house, and maybe our natural reactions, like I know my natural reaction is if my son's having a meltdown and he's trying to hit me, or he's punching, or he's kicking a hole in the wall, is to like stop that right now, right? But I know that's going to be the opposite of what he needs. He needs me to like co-regulate. He needs me to do all these things. But in high levels of stress, it can be really challenging to do. So we need to, sometimes we just need to take that pause for ourselves and to ground ourselves and find that 90 seconds to figure out what a better response would be, to help to support us and doing whatever it is that will help us in that moment. Viktor Frankl, he's kind of a guru in the space of mindfulness, often talks about how, between the stimulus or the trigger and between the response, there's this space. But sometimes that space, and it's in that space that we kind of choose our reaction. But of course, that space isn't always big enough for us. So the more that we can inject intentionally, that time for us to be able to grab that space, the better off we are going to be, right? So again, just having it post-it notes or anywhere, right? Of like, hey, take a pause, as a reminder to like go outside for that 90 seconds or whatever it is that you need to do, and then before coming back. So that is one simple thing. And then I also wanted to give us show this little video too that can be helpful as well, because sometimes having something to distract us can be helpful in the moment as well. So I'm going to make sure that you can hear the sound. Okay, so we're just going to practice this moment of pause for ourselves in this moment, and it's only like a minute and a half. This website actually has lots of great videos that could be helpful, and things just to help you kind of get grounded in the moment. So play this.
First, find a comfortable position where you won't be interrupted. Close your eyes. Become more aware of the sounds around you. Listen in a kind of way that is empty of judgment. Just observe. Acknowledge the sounds around you without giving them a like or a dislike. Just acknowledge. Accept. That is all. As you sit and listen, soften your face. Relax your whole face. Keep this feeling of relaxation and continue to listen. Without immediate reaction or impulse, revisit this same sense of calm whenever you are feeling tense during your daily activities. Listen and observe. Observe without reaction. Choose to pause in each moment. You can always find yourself again. You can take this sense of focused attention and observation with you through the rest of your day. You can apply this same method of listening inwardly. If you are feeling stressed or anxious, come back to this state of calm. Use this approach anytime you want to reduce tension and increase calmness in your day.
All right, so that's just a short little video. I'm going to put the chat or put the link to it in the uh, put the link in here into the chat so that you have it. There's all kinds of little videos, and you know the what it says on the image here is it says work, rest, picking your path, being more sustainable, and kind of the things you're doing. But it's the same thing, care, or take a rest in between, and it'll have the same kind of outcome. And I like to think about building our resilience just like if we're working out and we're trying to build mental or physical fitness. I'm a personal trainer on the side. Actually, don't really do much of that anymore, but I still maintain the certification, and and I competed in triathlons and things like that. And I remember I would do the same thing. I'd be like train, from the physical perspective, and I went every day, and I went very hard every day. And I noticed that I wasn't getting the gains that I wanted. But really, there is a what happens when in recovery is, or what happens, sorry, when we put stress on our body or physical stress on our body is that we actually, like, say we're building our biceps, we're going to get micro tears in our biceps that are actually degrading our muscles. They're actually making them a little bit weaker. And if we work on our biceps every single day, what's going to happen is they're going to get torn down. They're going to get worn out. And the same thing happens with our mental fitness is if we just keep pushing without this space for recovery, we're not going to have the sense of resilience that we need. And so, yeah, same thing with our biceps. We need to have, it's only in the space of recovery that we're actually building our resilience. Or our mental fitness, just like our physical fitness. So, just an interesting analogy to kind of keep in mind. You know, if we want to go far, we really need to intentionally inject these moments of recovery for ourselves, so that we can do well over the long term. It's really a strategic way to be more sustainable in being an effective caregiver. So I think so. Most of you have the workbook. If you don't have the workbook on you because you're on a phone or what have you, just grab a piece of paper. And what I am going to do is talk about some other practical strategies. Some of the things I talked about are somewhat practical, but not super tangible. And so we're going to talk about some more tangible things. And I want, as I'm sharing a couple of different tactics, I want you to think about, what would work, what resonates with you, what would work. And then we'll do a breakout session as well to talk about other set things that would work for you to give you an opportunity to network with other caregivers, and think about, what could be supportive for you and brainstorm amongst each other. And then we're going to pick one goal, one strategy that you're going to commit to in the long run, and but also remembering that we may pick a strategy and it might not work really effectively, and that's okay. We'll just try again, right, and try another thing. But but what's really important is not really what we do, it's just that we do something and that we commit to it. And really that persistence is something that's going to take off, just like in a journey of eating healthy or right or like trying to get fit. These things, it doesn't usually happen. You go on one diet and everything's perfect. It takes a continual process of trying to get better. Same thing with our own resilience and parenting, right? And everything and caregiving and all these kinds of things. So, let's go into some of these things. So first of all, the methodology that we're going to use to set a goal, just to give you context, is called WHOOP. So it's kind of a funny word, but basically it's an evidence-based methodology that helps us to set goals, but then kind of follow through with them. So if you've ever set kind of the New Year's resolution and then we fail after 15 days or 30 days, it's usually because we might not have thought about some of the obstacles that might get in the way, or we set a goal that's too lofty, or all those kinds of things. So the WHOOP goal setting is kind of like SMART goal setting, which probably a lot of you have heard of, like trying to make a specific goal, making sure it's like measurable, it's achievable, realistic, and there's a specific time to it. And so, like an example would be, so say we're wanting to increase our sense of self-efficacy. And so one of the tips I want to share is like, hey, because there's so many times that you feel like things aren't going well, or that we're feeling like a failure as a caregiver in a day. I'm going to try to improve my sense of self-efficacy and focus more on the positive and write down one win I had every day. And so we're going to try to do that for once a night. We're going to use a journal. We're going to do it and we're going to do it for 1 week and see how it goes and how I feel, right? So that would be kind of the goal. But then we're going to think about, what are the obstacles? Well, maybe I don't know. At nighttime, I might be too tired. I might not want to do it. Or I might get distracted because kids are keeping me up and I'm trying to get to sleep and I'm just going to fall asleep with them. Or like there could be so many different things, right? So then you're like, well, what am I going to do if this happens? And then you kind of create your plan. But one thing as well that I think is really important before we get into this is thinking about what your why is. Like, why do you want to um, create a goal to build your resilience? For myself, I think about, my why is pretty big. I think back to my mom and what happened with her and how devastating that was to me. And I recognized that she felt that she was becoming a burden to the family instead of the other way around, because she started to experience, mental health issues, physical health issues. And so I think about it. And again, it's kind of like in that chart before, it's like, do I just want to go, 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 go and burn myself out? Or do I want to be in this in the long haul, and be able to see the long game and be present for the kiddos in the way that I want, and have clarity, and be able to keep control when my son is melting down, or, when all these kinds of things are happening. And so, again, for me, it's like preventing that ultimate thing, and understanding and have experiencing burnout. Like, I just don't want to experience that again. Burnout for me was, yeah, it was lasted for about a year and probably still not 100% recovered from it. So we don't want to get to our space of that. And so that's my why. But I want you to think about what your why is. Why do you want to set a goal to be resilient, more resilient? You can throw it in the chat or just self-reflect and make a note of it. Sometimes asking the question of ourselves a couple of times can be helpful to get down to like the root issue. Yeah, and thank you for sharing. So setting the goal is the first step to action for sure, right? We need to, yeah, having that goal will help us move on it and work on it, right? Yeah. Yeah, so it could be supporting our own stability, making sure that we don't go, that we don't burn out, that we're going to be better caregivers, all these different things. But yeah, thinking about that can be supportive. So, okay. So let's talk about some of these tactics and then we'll do our breakouts to chat more a little bit around this one. So this one I've already chatted about and I think it's and I'm emphasizing a few different times. And I think just because it is so, so important, our mindset is so powerful and our awareness of where we're at and admitting if we're not doing well is so important. I've been, when we think about changing or if we're dealing with different issues, if we ignore things, ignore warning signs, all that, we're gonna, we're just gonna go in a downward spiral. So we have to have this self-awareness all the time. And so again, there's different ways that we can do that. So if we're going to be setting a goal for the self-awareness, it could be the check-ins that we're going to do with ourselves daily, internally. Maybe we're going to do it as a family at dinners and think about the rose, the bud, the thorn, and everybody does this check-in and it helps create self-awareness by everyone. And then we know how to treat and support each other a little bit better. Or maybe we're just going to even just once a week set a schedule for Fridays to do a self check-in and or Mondays or whatever day it works best for you to do the mental health continuum self-check to see where you're at as well. And then think about the other strategies that you want to do. So that is a baby step. And I have to say that one of the rules of thumb for changing behaviors and doing things differently is that we have to set the bar so low that we might want to trip over it, right? It's the 1% shift in changes in how we do things and how we show up that leads to long-term big goals or big impacts that really add up over time. So again, I encourage you to set something that's going to be really easy for you to do and then keep on building it and growing it. And these sessions are only offered every other month, but for the next one, for those of you, hopefully you'll return. If you return, I hope you all return. Then we'll talk more about doing that check-in to see how did that work, right? What could I do to maybe shift it? And in our breakouts, I'll encourage you to pick a buddy to think of someone who can hold you accountable to following through with your goal, because that's always really, really important. Sorry, we're not going to talk about this one. The next one is around gratitude. So again, there is so much research, and we all know this. We know that gratitude is important for us. We all probably know, that we have a negativity bias that we normally just focus on the negative things that are going wrong. It's a habit of the human race, of the human species to do that. Like if we don't focus on the negative, it's hard to fix things that are wrong. But we don't live in that world nowadays where there's always only threats. That could be debated, I suppose, depending on the situation you're in. But you want to think about we want to try to reframe our mind to start to have more positive thoughts than negative thoughts, and that's really going to impact our resilience. The ideal ratio of positive thoughts and negative thoughts is 5 to 1. And it's tricky to get there. Usually we have at a much lower level. There's even actually a quiz that I'll send you that can tell you where you're at right now to see how badly you might need this practice of gratitude. And that's awesome. Tara, thanks for sharing that your friend does a gratitude list every day. And it's incredible how it impacts things. I have a friend, family, she has 3 little kiddos, and her husband has brain cancer. And he's had 3 major surgeries. He's doing a full year of chemo and radiation. And they are the most grateful, happiest family I've ever seen, despite going through one of the worst things you can go through, right? And I know it's because of they're so grounded, and always so grateful for everything. And so, what gratitude is, Robert Emmons says it's just an affirmation of the goodness in our life. It makes what we have enough. And I think in today's world, I think we're always striving for something more, something bigger, something better. But these things really limit our happiness and our ability to cope and function with things when we're always miswanting for things that we may never get. So the more that we focus in on what we have and making it a gift and thinking about everything as a gift rather than as a burden is really going to help us. And so again, the simple goal for practicing gratitude, what the research says will have the biggest impact is to record 3 things, every day, whatever time of day that works best for you for a month, 30 days. And then if you do a pre-quiz of looking at at your positive and negative thought ratio before and after, it will significantly change. But that's a big goal. So you might want to just try it for a week. And what I've heard other people do that makes it simple is you pair it with something that you already do, like brushing your teeth. And you just practice your gratitude while you're brushing your teeth because you already have that habit. It's already ingrained. And then you're going to do that. And so you have to think about being really specific about what that is that you're grateful for, not just my health, right? I mean, a lot of us will kind of default to that, my family or whatever or something. But the more that we can be really, really specific about a specific situation that happened, just being having access to coffee in the morning, something I'm grateful for, just whatever it is, just trying to nail it down and be really specific, and it will definitely really have a big influence on you overall. So that's one. Another really powerful thing to do for gratitude is to write down a letter of gratitude to someone else. Write it down 250 to 300 words. Write down what you're grateful for them, then meet with that person and read it to them and watch their reaction at the same time. And it really has a huge, powerful impact on everyone. And that sense of gratitude just for support networks that you have or other networks, like whoever it is, or even the kiddos that you're with, it just has a big lasting meaningful impact as well. So those are two potential goals around the gratitude one. So again, as we set the goal at the end, we'll have to think about what barriers are to this and those kinds of things. But yeah, the simpler we can make it, the better. So here is another one, and this one you may be tempted to connect with the other one, but again, less is more as we start. But as I mentioned before, self-efficacy is something that really, really impacts our sense of positivity and well-being, but also helps to support us to prevent burnout, helps us manage high levels of stress that we might be dealing with in the home or other things. And it's basically that this sense that, that we're worthy, that we can do this. And so a simple thing that, again, that we can do is just like the gratitude journal, it might be before bed, we might pair it with something else, is just celebrating something that you're doing every day that is helpful. And you can also flip it too. You could also go to your spouse and do these things about sharing what you were grateful for, what your spouse did or has helped, how they've helped, or to celebrate their wins in terms of boosting the self-efficacy and doing it to each other. There's so many different ways that you can do it, but just write down one thing that you did that day that you accomplished that you felt good about. And even if it was just you did your best and you got out of bed, that sometimes is worth celebrating, right? So like don't set the bar really high for yourself, like you ran a marathon or something, or like any big wins. Just like keep it small and celebrate those things. And that will be a very simple thing again that can help us and make a big impact over the long run. Okay, so this one is around self-care. So self-care, I think it has a well, not a bad rap, but a miss it's not it's I think it's misdefined. It's we don't always think of it the way that we should. So I think a lot of us think of self-care as like, doing things for ourselves like getting massages or the bubble baths or going to a spa or like whatever it is, right? But I think it's more around mindset, but it's also about thinking tactfully about like what are the things I can do. And one of the main foundations of self-care is boundaries. And because you can't practice a thing that's going to fill your cup unless you have a good, healthy boundary. It can be a really challenging thing to get into place. And I know that I suffer from that a lot because I'm a people pleaser and it's really hard and it's something I'm always working at. And so I have to be so intentional about like how I'm going to inject some self-care into my days and how I'm going to set this boundary. And so even with my kids, I have problems setting the boundaries. And so I have to always stop and think, is this something that they want, something that I want, or something that they need, right? And then that way I can help to default that, and just by going through that thought pattern, that will help. But for ourselves as well, I actually in my calendar I try to categorize things in a way that that makes sure that there's time that I do something for myself and not just for other people. And so I color those purple for whatever reason. It was just the random color that was in there. And if there's no purple in my calendar in a week of all the kids' activities and the sports and the work engagements and whatever, then I know something has to change. And then I'll put something in there for myself. And it's something different all the time. So last week I got my nails done, which I don't normally do. I'm normally like kind of a tomboy and they're rough and now they're all pretty. And it forced me to just sit there, do nothing because I had my hands and I couldn't even move them, right? So it made me really like stop and reflect, which was helpful. So the boundaries piece is critical for this, but it may just be prioritizing and setting a boundary that every Saturday from 10 to 11 or whatever time it is that works for you, you have to do what works for you, is your time. It's your time to do something for yourself. Maybe it's just a time to plan what you're going to do the next week. But just intentionally injecting and scheduling that time off in your calendar because again, if you don't do it, someone else will eat up your time. So, and again, say self-care is just whatever that you do, whatever helps to support you feel enjoyment. But often the prerequisite for that is the boundaries, and that mindset piece that you deserve it, that you need it. And if you, and you're doing it as a strategic priority for yourself to be a more effective caregiver, right? It says, this is actually, I'm doing this to actually do better, to do better at what you do. So then the last one I'm going to chat about, and then we will chat into groups, is around connection piece. So there is so much research that talks about social connection and connecting with other parents, other adults, other people that helps to support us. It's I worked in health promotion in government, Ministry of Health for a number of years, and I know we were supporting health and well-being for communities and schools and workplaces. And we always focused on physical activity, healthy eating, and mental well-being, but really rarely ever went deep into the mental health piece or talked about connection. But if you look at UK, Japan, like they have ministers of loneliness. Like they are very much into it and understand how important it is. And there's some statistics, especially since the pandemic and what we've seen what happen with our kiddos, right, as they're trying to learn social skills and then being isolated and everything, and what that's done to the mental health and everybody's mental health, how much connection matters. And so the research is saying now that loneliness can be more deadly than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And it used to be sitting was the new smoking, but now loneliness is the new smoking, meaning that, it's a preventable cause. It's a preventable cause of death. This having feeling alone, feeling isolated in the things that we're doing. And loneliness isn't necessarily it's not about the quantity of connections that we have, it's about the quality. So it's really about thinking about the few different people that we have in our lives that we can intentionally connect with to help to support us. Maybe it's just that time to vent with another caregiver, another parent. So I early in the pandemic, I made my goal for connection was to connect with a neighbor friend and go for a 30-minute walk every Thursday evening. And we've been doing it now for years, and it's just like my time to connect with her, vent, talk about stuff. We're both got kiddos we're taking care of, and it's just something that's really excuse me, powerful and also gets me outside in nature. And sometimes I'm like, the kids are like, no, don't go, but it's 30 minutes. I'm like, they will survive, right? And then you come back and it just makes a world of a difference. So any goal that you can make around connection, intentional connection with other people that's going to be meaningful, is something that can be really, really helpful as well. So enough of me talking. I will pause the recording. For those of you watching the recording, take this time to think about what you're going to do and or brainstorm other things that you can do to help to support and build your resilience, remembering that usually less is more, and then we want to continually to build upon that as we go. Okay, so we're back from our breakout rooms, and hopefully everyone has set a goal. Thank you everyone for doing that. So as you're setting your goals, it can be really helpful to pick an accountability partner to help you follow through with that goal. But as you're doing that, it's also important to remember that it's a journey. Building our resilience is a journey, and it's not a destination. So make sure to continually focus on innovating and using a growth mindset if our goals don't pan out, and set a new goal based on your ideas or ideas that were presented today. And just remember, we don't have to be perfect. Even if we do our goal once or twice in a week, and we aim to do it every week or every day, that's totally fine. It's just a journey of figuring out what works out for us. And if you want more information or contact my contact information, it is up here. So thank you everyone for being here and watching the recording. If anyone has ideas for suggestions or ideas and suggestions for topics for future sessions, please don't hesitate to send me an email, and or else to send it to AFK. I think the best person would be Cassandra, if you know who Cassandra is. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and best wishes in setting your goal to and following through with your goal to build your resilience.